to defend their life, family, or property from aggression, whether from an individual or from a government. Well, so much for editorializing. A lot of fancy words, but what it comes down to is the Founding Fathers knew what they were doing. And they may have stated in order to maintain a militia, but at the time, the militia were just regular folks that answered a call to service. Let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with Tap Into the Truth. We have been talking about some of the fallout from the day after the deal. But we've also took a little time to talk about the Second Amendment. And, while we're on the topic of the Second Amendment, let's talk about the First Amendment a little bit. For some reason, I just feel the need to editorialize because the more I look into both these stories, it's so obvious that we are under attack. Our basic fundamental rights are under attack. This administration, through Obamacare and through other various nefarious means, has been attacking the very basic fundamental building blocks, not only of our Constitution, but our God-given rights. The First Amendment includes freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and freedom of the press. Well, the press is free to report whatever it wants to as long as the reports have been cleared by the occupier. But freedom of religion is really being challenged. I'm going to editorialize a little bit on this, but I'm going to do it through reading a blog posting that I made not too long ago, although it was back during the earlier debates in regards to what the individual mandate meant. It's titled Religious Freedom. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Those are the first words of the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. This is our constitutional guarantee of religious freedom here in America, but it's also the basis of the legal concept of separation of church and state. The concept of separation of church and state, as it was intended, was and still is vital to maintaining religious liberties. The problem is today, too many people have come to believe that this separation means that there is to be no expression of anything remotely religious by any branch, form, or activity within any level of our government. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights were written in simple, clear, and concise language so that there would be very little room for misunderstanding and no need for interpretation. There's also a reason why freedom of speech immediately follows freedom of religion in the First Amendment. Not just to protect political speech, as it's been often insisted, but religious speech as well. The separation is clearly meant to protect all those of faith and no faith at all from being persecuted by any majority. No one religion or denomination thereof can be made the mandatory faith of the nation. All are free to practice or not, with few exceptions, as they see fit. That is the limit of this separation. It does not equate to freedom from religion, as so many folks on the left would have you believe. Let me say that again. Freedom of religion does not equal freedom from religion. Too often in recent history, our court system has taken the slant that the separation is somehow supposed to protect people of differing spiritual backgrounds from being offended by someone else's spiritual practices. In an effort to keep from offending others, our courts pushed by activist groups like the ACLU, have endeavored to sanitize religion from almost every aspect of daily government business and every single special occasion that a school or city hall might have cause to recognize, i.e. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, Hanukkah. All of this done using separation of church and state as the linchpin of their argument in the name of protecting the delicate sensibilities of a hypersensitive minority who don't seem to understand that just because they are offended by something, it doesn't mean that their rights are being violated. No one has the civil right to not be offended. In fact, I would say that with the proper application of freedom of speech and freedom of the press, it's pretty much guaranteed that everyone will be offended by something at some point in time. It is not a violation of your civil rights if you're a Christian and you see me wearing a Star of David. It's not a violation if you're a Jew and you see me unroll a prayer rug and start praying towards Mecca. It's not a violation if you're a Muslim and you see me wearing a cross or an I Love Jesus t-shirt. If in a court building there are monuments to the ideas and documents of historical significance to the foundation of our legal system, then it is wholly reasonable and appropriate that the Ten Commandments be present just as much as the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Magna Carta, or any other such deemed worthy. This is not about establishment of religion, but recognition of the historical impact that the Ten Commandments had on the legal system of the United States. Having the Ten Commandments, or any other scripture from any holy book or teaching for that matter, posted in a government building does not mean that you must follow that faith to expect equal treatment in your dealings there. If you feel that you're being discriminated against just because of a sign or a plaque is hanging somewhere in a building, do you really think your business there will be handled any differently if the sign wasn't there? If City Hall has a nativity scene at Christmas, does it cause you harm to see it if you're not a Christian? Is it worse if that same City Hall, in an effort to be more inclusive, adds Hanukkah or even Kwanzaa symbols to their holiday display? I probably should have left Kwanzaa out of there given the uproar going on with that right now. But back to the writing. I've heard people from the ACLU actually say that it does make it worse and demand that there be no non-secular displays. If a high school football game is opened with a prayer, is anyone being hurt? Are players, coaches, or fans of different spiritual backgrounds being prevented from participating because of the prayer? Is anyone's civil rights being violated as I've defined it? I mean, don't get me wrong. There are limits. No one should be directly or even indirectly challenging you or your beliefs in these settings. No one should be actively working against you or your best interests based solely on your beliefs. However, the saying of a prayer before a high school graduation is not a challenge to anyone's belief. It's just an expression of someone's belief. While this may lead to feelings of being uncomfortable by those of a different spiritual leaning, being uncomfortable is not a violation of your civil rights. Now, to be completely hardcore about the issue, the Constitution is a document intended to limit the scope and power of the federal government of the United States, while guaranteeing many basic rights to the states and the citizens. The founders never thought in terms of the public schools being a function of the government, especially the federal government. These facts alone beg the question, does the separation of church and state, as stated in the Constitution, even apply to locally run and funded school systems or state courthouses? I mean, yeah, legal rulings and judgments after judgments have sided with the secular But these rulings have been made by activist judges on the same side as the secularists, or by judges who are seeking to protect the rights of a minority without addressing the basic question of whether or not any rights were actually being challenged or violated. To sum it up, you have the right to be uncomfortable and or offended. You have the right to believe or not believe, however you choose. You have the right to express your political, social, and religious beliefs. Your rights are not being infringed upon if you are exposed to the ideas or beliefs of others. Your rights are being infringed upon if you are being forced to actively participate in another's faith-based activities, or are being excluded from activities, honors, recognition, or actions of justice based on your faith or lack thereof being different from those in a position of authority. So what's the takeaway there? Hopefully, to a lot of you, that'll sound like common sense. And when you take that bit of common sense and apply it to the world around us, what we are seeing on a daily basis, there's little question that things like the individual mandate, things like the women's health issues, as they've been called, being mandatory parts of Obamacare, where contraceptives and abortions have to be covered by employers, even if the employer happens to be the Catholic Church, which on religious grounds both opposes artificial birth control and definitely opposes abortion. Those are all attacks on the free practice of their faith. I've got a few other things to say in regards to religious freedom and whether the government has the right to impose its will in those kind of forms, impose its will in our bedrooms at all. But I don't have time to go into that in today's episode. In fact, we're running pretty close to the end of our time limit here for this part 2. And unfortunately, we got derailed a little bit off of the main topic, but it's important that we continue to see the big picture. We need to see these attacks on our fundamental individual rights, and we need to recognize them. And it is related to the fiscal cliff deal, in so much as I've already said, this has all been political theater. It's all been intended to keep you distracted while they continue to chip away at your rights. They don't want you paying attention to what it is they're doing. They don't want you to navigate your way through all the minutiae and see what they're really up to. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our time tonight. Thanks for listening to Tap Into the Truth. I am your host, Tim Tapp. Good night, everybody.